Welcome to Richard Photo Lab in Hollywood, California.
We are so excited. We just wrapped up our shoot with Brandon and Brian Wright. And now we're here at Richard Photo Lab. We're gonna get our film processed and see what we got.
Let's go take a look.
All right.
Before we came here to Boise to film these episodes, we stopped off in Hollywood at Richard Photo Lab to literally see where the magic happens.
We got the opportunity to visit my personal lab, and I think the best lab in the whole wide world, Richard Photo Lab.
Full disclosure, Richard Photo Lab is a partner of this show. They provided funding to help us make it. But even if they hadn't, I know we still would have sent our film there.
So excited.
Hey, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, good to see you again.
Yes.
As a film shooter, you're always involved in a partnership with a lab, unless you're developing all your own film, but with color negative film, that's really hard to do. So when you're shooting color, you need a good lab, and Richard Photo Lab is widely regarded as the best lab in the world.
It's so exciting for me to get to take a tour of the lab and see everything that they do behind the scenes. And I think that you will find it really interesting as well.
This is one of my favorite people because this is Brian from Richard Photo Lab, where I process all my film.
After we shoot our film, we package it up, we mail it to Richard Photo Lab, and the results you get back are just absolutely amazing.
I'm really stoked because I think there's a lot more that goes into it than we all realize.
Brian, why don't you tell a little bit about your lab, and then I have some questions for you.
We're a lab that specializes in working with professional photographers, and basically what you'll find as we go through the lab is that there are a lot of things that we do that are sort of special, they're really hard, and we really are just going the extra mile at every step along the way to make sure that the photographer gets what they need. And that's pretty much what sets you apart from being a professional lab to just being a basic lab, is that you're involved with photographers that have serious projects, that have serious expectations, and they need somebody to help them get all the way through these things. There's so many different ways you can take the color that somebody has to try and make it right. And it's usually better if the photographer sticks to doing great photography and then has a lab that focuses on trying to make the color great.
I have to say, you guys have really, what separates you from other labs that I've worked with in the past for me is that you guys have really gone the extra mile, 10, 20, 30 miles when I really need you, and really like gave me a look. And that consistent look is so important when you're trying to brand yourself as a photographer. And when you're working with a lab partner, you know, really choose wisely, because you want to make sure it's someone who cares about your photography, and someone who wants to make you look good and consistently do that.
What Tanya and I and Tia love about shooting film so much is that it minimizes what you have to do. It minimizes what you have to do while you're shooting, because the controls are much more simplistic, and it minimizes what you have to do after you get your images back, because Richard Photo Lab does so much.
always myself really wanted to see the process of what happens when I drop my film off to when I get my scans back. We were hoping that maybe you would give us a little tour.
Absolutely. Okay, so right off the bat, we've got, this is our customer service area. We're talking to clients, emails, we're writing up all the orders. My own desk is here in this space with the general manager, Bill, and even Angela does our marketing. All of the way the lab runs, marketing, the way we interact with customers, it all sort of intertwines. So we set this space up so that we could all work together and be really aware of what's going on. We're a small company, so we want to know who's calling, making sure everything's going okay. There's a lot of pressure on photographers, so when they're on the phone trying to get answers, we need to make sure they're getting good answers. They're getting the information they need.
Can we get a tour of what you do with our
Definitely.
film
Well,
from
why don't
start
we
to
start
finish?
with where we take the first things we do with the film.
Give it to you.
Let's start with that. So
Make
let's
us pretty.
So let's go to the.
Yeah, can you make us look good?
I sure can.
This
So
is us as models, not as photographers, so there's extra pressure. Not only
Yeah,
do we want
extra
the film
pressure.
to
I
look
think we
good,
can
we
handle.
have to look
I
good.
think we can handle. So you guys want to start with the film processor?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's check it
Let's
out.
go. Okay, right, so this is where it all starts. This is where we prep the film to go into the processors. And so, since you guys want to watch with a camera, I brought some dummy rolls.
Oh, awesome.
It has to be dark in there. So Cam here is going to load up our 2 rolls on the film processor racks. He's going to go through the darkroom door, and we're going to meet him on the other side with,
Awesome.
with the lights on so we can actually see the film, go into the machine, and see what's going to happen.
So right off the bat, I'm noticing that it's not your drugstore machine where you just see them take your film and load it up and stick it in the machine. You want to explain what's different about this than that?
Sure. The drugstore and those types of things that you see out and about they're called daylight machine, and basically it grabs the end of the film and drags it through the machine across a series of sponges and rollers and things like that. And for years, the professional way to process film has been dip and dunk processing. So it's not so. You'll find a dip and dunk processor in the best labs in the country.
Yeah.
And it's basically
So without
film
the rollers, that kind of minimizes the chance of like scratching
Nothing
and
touches
chemical streaks, that kind of stuff.
Right, well nothing's going to touch the film. And even if something came through the processor and there was like a little water marker, even anything like that, that stuff we can wash off. What you can't fix is a scratch.
Right.
And through a roller transport or a daylight machine, the things you see in a drugstore, there's a lot of potential for damage, especially with 220, which is most of my clients, that's their favorite film.
Right.
So we want to put it through this machine where it's the only thing touches the film is chemistry. And then on the other side, you'll see how we handle it to continue sort of the care for film. All right, so Cam's gonna load up the film right now on the rack, and you can hear the machine cycling. This particular rack actually holds several rolls of film, but just to show you guys, we're gonna just load up one of each, a roll of 120, roll of 35.
Right. And on the color negative film, all the development time is the same, right? So that's why you can load up different rolls of film together?
Exactly. Every roll of normal processing is the same amount of time in the developer. And as you can see, at this stage, nothing is touching the actual film. Even where it's across the roller, there's a little ridge right there that's barely touching the rebate edge only, which there's no image on that area. So nothing's touching the film. The only area that anything is the clip mark, which is at the beginning and end of the roll that you guys can't shoot on. So here it's about to get lifted up and go into the first batch of chemistry. Here comes the roll of 120 right behind it. probably the first time Cam's done this with the lights on in I don't know how many years. But yeah, he's essentially going to do this in pitch black all day long. And in just a second here, it'll go into the first developer, and then you can even see on the side here, you can see the different chemicals and things like that.
All right, and just to point out for anybody that just isn't clear, this in the back here is 35 millimeter film on the smaller format film cameras, and this is medium format film, which there's a bunch of different formats of that, like 6x6, 645, 6.7, but the roll would always look like that.
And in this case, you've got a roll of 120, so it's your options for shooting medium format are 120 or 220. 220 basically is twice as long. We pretty much is going to look it's going to hang just like that roll of 35. You got twice as many frames. You don't have to load the camera as much. But not all cameras take 220. Every medium format camera is going to take 120, and only some will take 220. So for instance, like a pro shooter, like these guys, they're going to shoot 220 no problem in like a Contax or a Hasselblad. But if they're going to shoot with a Holga or Lomo, that's only going to be 120. And there's even some formats that are some film types that are only made in 120. Yeah, so basically the film was just waiting there. This rack here is waiting for the same, so you're about to see it move away from us into the development tank. So right now it's just waiting, and there it goes right into the chemistry.
Okay, probably get around.
It's kind of hard to see. It's easier to see with the lights on when the lights off. But essentially, what's going to happen when we've got multiple rolls of film is that these racks are going to be full of film. So every rack's going to have 5 or 8 rolls of film, 7 rolls of film, depending on the rack. And the whole machine will be full from start to finish, from up here where it's waiting, through the development and all the wash tanks, and into the dryer. And when it comes out of the dryer, it's done. It's safe to have outside. It's dry to the touch. You want to check out the other side? I'll show you where the film comes out.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Okay, so this is the dryer section of the machine, and we'll just sneak this one out of here. Really careful so nothing happens. Put it on our inspection box.
So you say inspection box. What exactly are you looking for when it first comes out of the dryer?
Well,
Exposure or?
we're kind of looking for everything. We want to make sure everything is okay. So, 2 rolls in, 2 rolls out, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's the easy one. But we're gonna visually check make sure nothing is drastically underexposed. We tag it for the scanning people to work on it, so they know that sort of like there might be something going wrong. We will sometimes call a client when there's something wrong, and in fact, this example that I have right here, this client will get a phone call from us because.
Tell me why.
Well, what we've got here is, I think this went through the camera twice.
Oh, double exposed.
Yes, but
Yeah.
by the looks of it, probably not on purpose. So I think sometimes that happens. People load the camera twice.
Yeah.
And what basically we don't want, I don't want a client to just find out about this later.
When they show up and.
Right. Like so, for instance, if Tanya's on a shoot, she does a shoot on Sunday, films on us on Tuesday. I got to tell her before the next shoot if there's something wrong with her gear.
Absolutely.
So this one's not a gear problem. This is just somebody made a little misstep on their handling. Maybe they did it on purpose.
Yeah.
But we'll want to let them know. Just give them a call.
That's a great idea. And obviously, this double exposure problem, there's nothing you can go back and fix there. But if it is underexposed or overexposed, can you guys do something to work with that in your next step?
Well, we adjust every frame when we're scanning.
Okay.
So we try and compensate for that to try and give you a consistency. That is something that we're watching for. And in this case, you can, if you look behind here, let me move this one. Grab it on the side. So if you just kind of glance at this from afar, you can see the top frames are dark and the other ones are not dark.
Yes.
So
So their
loosely,
exposures are inconsistent.
they're inconsistent. From here down, they're actually consistent, and I would call that normal. From here up, I'd say that's overexposed. Where this comes from for us is that when you're doing a commercial shoot, nobody cares about anything except for a good final product. It needs to be right.
Yeah.
So the photographer's got to be on the money. The lab's got to be on the money. Even if you're shooting digital, it's the same thing. Somebody's got to go in there and make sure this stuff is right, every single frame. The advantage of working with film and work with a pro lab is that they're going to be on every single frame to make sure it's right.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful relationship. I love it. So what would be the next process? What would we do from here?
Well, we're going to go to scanning next.
Okay. So that's when we get to really see what's happened.
Exactly. That's
Awesome.
let's check it out.
Okay.
So if you're doing a book, if you're going to do like your portfolio collection of the greatest shots you've ever done from your commercial stuff, your fashion, your personal work, and you're going to have a really killer book made, then what you want to send to the people making this book are prints. And the best print, you need to send them the very best prints, because as they make a book, they're going to scan them and the quality is going to be graded. Well, if you start with a better original, then you're going to get a better book.
So in your opinion, the best original happens in the darkroom versus the scan and then digital print method?
If for black and white, if I'm going to
Okay.
shoot black and white film as a fine art photographer, and I'm going to make a book, I need to go do a fiber-based print to send that to a press. Because like if a press, so that's where we're most often working in this darkroom. So for instance, we have a client that shoots a lot of like rock and roll stuff, and then because these people are famous, the people want to make a book out of it. So it's so much is shot on real black and white. We make some amazing black and white prints that are used as the master when they make a book.
And you're just black and white only, or can you do color that way as well?
You can do color in the darkroom, but we have a color darkroom for color and a black and white darkroom for black and white.
Okay.
And but in the cases of if I'm going to say I'm the photographer, all my color work is going to be better if I'm printing digitally, and my fine art black and white is going to be amazing on this really special paper made by hand in the darkroom. But at the end of the day, most of our printing is done in the digital printing world.
Okay.
It's efficient.
So say I've never shot film and I'm just really curious, like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? So what you're kind of saying is it's probably best to scan originally and then pick out the prints that you would want to make in the darkroom.
Definitely.
Okay.
You definitely
Hand pick
Yeah, let's
certain
start.
ones.
I always want to see people start with scanning. It's a medium that it brings us into a medium that we can all kind of deal with. They can look at it on their computer. We really like to see people do proof prints because they're not very expensive, and that's where you really see the difference between digital and film. Is if you shot digital and you had prints made, and then you shot film the same and had prints made, you put those side by side. Now you're going to see a difference. A lot of people that are new to film, they shoot both, they put them side by side on their screen, and they're like, what's the big deal?
It looks
I
the
don't
same
get it.
to me.
Yeah,
I
I don't
don't
really
see
get
a
it. Oh, it's a
difference.
little better. Oh, well, that grain is weird.
So really looking at that print.
That print, yeah.
Is
I mean,
what you're after.
that's really what photography is about, is making a print. And a lot of people these days have really skipped over that whole process.
Yeah, there is nothing like just holding the print in your hand versus looking at it on your computer screen.
That's
Yeah.
for sure, especially because screens are all over the place. I mean, are we looking at it on an iPhone? Are we looking at it on our grandma's computer? Are we looking at our laptop?
calibrated?
Is it calibrated? They're all over the place.
Yeah, I know I always worry about my clients when they first see their pictures. If they're not seeing them in print form, how I know I'm going to be proud to show them, then they're seeing them on their computer screens, and it's like you never know what computer they're looking at and how
Right.
that's calibrated. It always gives me like a little like in my stomach.
And that's why I love prints, because if you can, I know some people that will not show their work digitally until their client has prints in hand, because they want to control the experience and make sure the client sees exactly your vision.
Right.
And a print is how you do that.
Yeah.
Digitally, you can't control it.
So, so the next step from here would be to go to the scanning, and you can kind of show us how that scanning of the film would work then.
Right.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're doing a lot of different types of scanning. We've got drum scanning and flatbed scanning for either fine art projects or archival projects. The majority of our work is on all these scanners behind me, which we've got Noritsu scanners on one side, Frontier scanners on the other. The reason we have the two different scanners is because they offer a slightly different quality between the two. And
So what is the real difference in is it a different look that they provide, or?
it's incredibly subtle. I would say generally most people that are fashion oriented, in fact 100% of our commercial work is done down the Noritsu scanner. In most cases, I can tell you up front which one you're going to like based on your history.
Yeah.
So if, for instance, if you've been shooting film for 10 years and you're just need to work with a new lab for whatever reason, you're probably going to drift towards the Frontier because you are like a long-term film person. If you're coming out of digital and you've never really messed around with film at all, you are almost always going to want the Noritsu, because really, it's now you're talking about the way that people view images. Again, we talked about versus print versus screen.
Yes.
Most digital shooters are looking on screen. They're going to be happier with the Noritsu scan on screen than they are with a Frontier. There's this noise and stuff on a Frontier scan that is distracting if you're only looking at it on screen. But if you print them, if you print an 8x10 from each, they're both going to be perfect and amazing. Mike right here is working on Noritsu scanner.
Wow, and he's like taking each individual frame, I notice.
Right, he's making a correction to each frame. It basically does a pre-scan where it looks at all the frames, and then it brings it up on screen, and then he adjusts every single frame. And when we're working with a pro photographer, we usually have a collection of information about them with a profile, if you will, or a color pack that helps us understand what this color is supposed to look like. He could make this super warm, he could make it super cold, dark, he could do all kinds of stuff in here.
So there's so many options that's why it's so important to have a good relationship with the lab, so the lab really knows your work and knows what options to click on, because it's going to be night and day difference in what the final image looks like.
Right, that is really the hardest part, is that you have to, it's not what the machine can do, and it's not even what the operator can do, it's needing to understand what your client needs. It's a lot more fun to do something the way a client wants it than do it our way and then have to try and convince people that that's the only way. In fact, actually, when we started with your stuff, I think the phone call was commit to doing 5 weddings.
Yeah.
We kept track of who did the work, and you picked out the ones that you thought were the best.
Yeah.
And when we went back to look at our records, we found that one guy
had
done the ones you loved the best, and somebody else had done the ones that you thought were okay but not as great.
Right.
And there you go.
Yeah.
And all these years later, he still does your work. So up here on the wall, what you've got is, many dozens of examples of how a photographer might like their work. And inside here we actually have notes very specific to the way they want their stuff. And we'll have an image that represents the kind of color. And this is essentially, we set this up ahead of time with a photographer. We grab some images, we send the prints out, and we come up with what it is that they're looking for.
That's awesome that it's so specific to the individual photographer.
If you pay a lab, it doesn't matter if it's me or anybody else, it should be ready to go right out of the scanner. My clients are telling me they'll spend half an hour to an hour in post-production.
Yeah, I get
Just
that
sort of
question
like,
a
they're just
lot
kind of
on
reviewing
film
it.
that I've gotten back from you guys. Like, okay, so what did you do when you got this back? And I always say, if I pass the minute mark in Photoshop, it's a special. I'm doing something special that usually it's just almost there, right out of the.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of thing. If you're going to pay for it, you shouldn't have to do the work again.
Right.
Do you want to see where we're doing all that kind of work?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, so let's go to quality control area. So we saw the film get scanned, and after it's scanned, it's going to come through this group. We've got a few people over here, and essentially, as you can see on this monitor, she's just going to go through and double check it. And for instance, in this case, black and white, there's some spotting that needs to take place because there's little dust particles.
Okay.
And so she'll go through and just double check. We're checking for frame lines. She's checking for contrast, and
There you are.
I'm on there, Ryan.
that's you right there. And she's just to make sure it's ready to go before we send it. This almost takes as long as scanning.
This is just having pride in your work.
It's got to be right.
Yeah.
I mean, if I send this to a commercial photographer or busy photographer, they got to go. They need to shoot.
Yeah.
That's where they make money.
Yeah.
They don't have time to spot stuff. They want to get this delivered to their client. And if for instance, because we're dealing with a physical piece of film and a mechanical machine, maybe the film went through and there's a little frame line. Well, that frame is unusable with that frame line in it. Somebody's got to fix it.
Yeah.
And if I scan it on Tuesday, spot it on Wednesday, get it back to you, and you haven't looked at it for 2 more weeks, that was you're ready to deliver, and you're like, oh my God, there's a frame line. This frame is totally not usable.
Absolutely.
So we fix it before it gets to you because you got stuff to do.
Absolutely. What a gift.
We've got a couple of different printing styles going on here. We do large printing on this machine, 30 by 90, but really most of our proof printing is done on this machine here. We don't have it on right now because it's kind of loud and beepy a lot.
Okay.
But I can show you what we're doing here. Like for you, we do about like a 4.5 by 6 on pretty much everything that you do. For some clients, we'll do a contact sheet. Like this job is a commercial job, and so he'll scan everything, and then we make a contact sheet. So there's his medium format, his black and white, and essentially he's using this to either have a conversation with the client or to pick out what images might be going. If it's a product shot or something like that, they'll look at it in this way as opposed to using a single print.
So you do the scanning and the contact sheet. That's
right, either scanning a contact sheet or scanning in a proof
prints.
print. Most people like proof prints because you can kind of play around with
and
them.
they're a little bigger, so you can
Yeah, they're
see
bigger.
more.
It's easier. In fact, the contact sheets are actually kind of hard for people to use that have never done them before. You need to get used to how to read one. So proof prints are probably a better deal for most people because then you get a whole 4x6 and put it on your fridge and pass it around and stuff like that.
Why, in your opinion, do photographers still make that effort to continue to shoot it, even though it takes all of this process and everything to make the final image?
I think there's a distinct difference between digital and film, and I'm actually not. I'm not going to say one is better than the other. I think that they each serve a very important purpose, and that they should be. It's a tool in the toolbox. So if I'm shooting for a newspaper, low quality, it's printed, on low quality paper, they need it super fast, I gotta shoot digital. If I'm gonna print something that is a portfolio piece, it's for a person. If you're giving it to a person, you're essentially giving them something that they are gonna have forever, for 20 years, 50 years. For the rest of their life, they're gonna pass it down to people, whether it's a portrait or it's a wedding or something like that. Prints, it's worth the effort, and the effort has always been put in with all these photos that we've seen during our life, and it's only in the last few years with the mass use of everything digital that a lot of people sort of forgot about this heirloom, that if you don't make it important, if you don't take care of your images, then nobody ever will. And so to me, it's almost like you start losing, it's like, why even shoot it then? Even though we're in Los Angeles, 70-80% of our clients never walk through the door.
Really? So you're able to work with clients from all over the world.
Yeah.
How do they get? How do they get a hold of your film? How do you get a hold of their film?
They just ship it in. You want to talk to somebody? You dial the phone. We're going to answer it and just help you figure out what the project is. This is the room where we do really special stuff. It's all hand done. There's no fast way to do this stuff. And old school with a sink and chemistry, it's usually best straight from a black and white neg. And usually what we're working on is really high-end projects that are like book masters. If you're gonna have a book made and you're gonna go to maybe one of the most amazing book printers in the world, they're in Germany and Japan, and they're kind of scattered around the world. These are huge machines that do these amazing books. But what you need to give them is a master. If you give them a digital file, they have no idea what it's supposed to look like. Your book is almost guaranteed to look off. So what a fine artist is going to do is give them a master set. If it's black and white film, we're going to print that in here. Something like this, it's on a super heavy paper. This can't be really processed by a machine. The person that prints this work in here, we have 3 different printers, and they all have, anywhere from 20, 30 years printing experience.
Wow.
So
it's just an entirely different craft in its own.
Totally. Again, these guys don't shoot. Their art is in printmaking. The machines that we just saw a few minutes ago in the digital print room, each one of those machines is going to do like 1,000 prints an hour, 2,000 prints an hour. Those things are super fast. The goal in this room would be to do like maybe 10 prints a day.
Up to what size can you print in here?
So we'll go up to 20 by 24. There are ways to go bigger than that, but really that's sort of our focus.
Right.
You don't really shoot a roll of film and then just go straight to fiber-based printing.
Right.
You have the proof prints made, then you get a selection of which ones you really like. Send 1 or 2 in for a fiber-based print.
To see the quality of what silver gelatin prints are, you really need to go see it in person. They're just stunning. And while it'll look good on the computer or on the show, watching it on YouTube, to see it in person is just something else. This weekend, for the first time, I had the opportunity to go to Photographic West and the Weston Gallery in Carmel and see some of Ansel Adams and Ruth Bernhard and Imogen Cunningham and Brett Weston's work printed. And I mean, I've been studying it for years, you know, I'm so familiar with it, and to see the silver gelatin prints was a completely new experience with the image.
That's a perfect example. There's really great printing you can do, but there's something about this particular type of quality. This is considered to be the best black and white print. And so, for instance, if a gallery is selling images, this is what they're going to get the most money for.
Each one becomes like a one-of-a-kind work of art. You know, it's not getting a master and then just printing off a bunch of those. Each one has its own like nuances and is its own work of art.
It's totally true. I mean, that's why even if you mentioned Ansel Adams, there's prints that he signed that are the ones he physically made. There's ones that his assistants made while he was alive and he initialed, said, "These I approve." And then there's prints that his assistant made after his passing that are probably still amazing, but they're all a little different. They all there's a huge difference in value. I mean, this is as close to, the difference here is really about like a painter. You know, every single one is incredibly unique.
That was awesome.
That was really cool. What that really showed me is like, it's worth every single penny, and the amount of work that you see like a pro lab put into your film. And you know, no wonder why it is an investment.
Even though I've even been into the storefront a couple of times, and I've actually had Brian show me the back rooms once or twice, I didn't realize the level of detail and care that went into everyone's images.
Richard Photo Lab for me is like an extension of my business. They're like my partner in crime.
They hold the hand of your film and they make sure it comes out exactly the way that you like.
What really stood out to me is that I want to make sure I'm printing my work. Just being reminded of that. The big selling point of digital is, you know, it's so convenient. We can make so many family memories. You know, you'll have pictures of everything. My family has 5 kids. We have 10 photo albums, and you know where they end? The day we got a digital camera.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
Yes.
the family never sits down to go through iPhoto to look at it. We always just go through the old film prints.
That's so true, yeah.
Print your work.
It seems like they really love what they do. They really love what they do.
If I do my job right and they do their job right, then the beautiful images are the result.
What a team. What a team. I love that. Print your work. Amen. Because I have a bunch of stuff that's never been printed and it is on film. It's just sitting there, but this is inspiring. Yeah.
All right.
It's like Christmas.
I've used them for a couple of years now, and they're just the best.
The reason I love shooting film is because it gives me the freedom. When you send it off to the lab and you get it back, there's very little work to be done at that point. They do all the hard stuff.
There is no I in team. Yeah. There's an R though, for Richard.
It's a wrap.
We're out of here.
Thank you, Richard Photo Lab. You guys are the best.
Can we like fade to black?
Or they'll just like keep filming as we sit here and look like idiots.
I'm out.
Should we go? Let's go. Let's go.
All film was provided by Fujifilm. And a special thanks to Richard Photolab for processing all images in this episode. Like the music? Special thanks to Triple Scoop Music. Frame Network giveaways are brought to you by B&H. Head to giveaways.framenetwork.com for your chance to win. Find out more about the equipment used in this episode on framenetwork.com.